Hi friends, Jeanette here with Vivo Vintage Designs. Welcome to today's video. Before we get started, I'll remind you that all the products used are listed in the description box along with the links. If you don't see the list, click on Show More or the arrow pointing down and it will expand. Also, if you enjoy this video, don't forget to like, comment, or subscribe. Your interaction is really helpful and very appreciated. So now to the video. I am so excited to share this with you. I've been seeing a lot of those three-dimensional pieces of art that are done with alcohol ink, Yupo paper, and a soldering gun, where they poke holes through the Yupo paper and they make it dimensional. It's just so pretty, but I don't have a soldering gun, and quite honestly, with my luck, I'd end up burning myself or something else. So I was laying in bed wondering, how can I create something that is dimensional with the alcohol inks? So going back to the Christmas cards that I made in 2021, I did one where I used foam tape to make the ornament cutouts stand out from the card, and that's what triggered this creation. So you can see here I'm putting down some ink. I've also used copper and gold metallic paint ink rather. And I've used colors that match the decor in my home. So I used latte, mushroom, and pebble. And now you can see that, first of all, I sprayed a little alcohol on the photo paper first because I wanted to make sure that the paper was nice and wet so that the inks would flow nicely. So now now that I've applied all my inks, I am just tilting my paper in different directions to make sure that the entire sheet of paper is covered with the inks. And also I wanted to make sure that I don't get clumps of the metallics, because you know they have a tendency to do that. So moving the paper like this helps break them up. So I'm just moving the paper from side to side, and before it starts to drip off the edge of the paper, I make sure to tilt it in a different direction. But you can spread your ink whatever way works best for you. I just didn't want to lose any of the ink. It was important to me that I have enough color on the paper. So I didn't want it dripping off. So now I'm using my airbrush to move the ink around and trying to create some interesting patterns on the paper. But this wasn't doing it for me. So I sprayed a little alcohol on it just to get the inks moving again. And found I needed to spray more alcohol on the paper. I'm just trying to create some interest, a pattern on the paper, because that's going to be really important. So now you see me using my airbrush again to move the inks around. Again, trying to make sure that the entire sheet of paper is covered with the ink. Now this is the first time I'd done this, so I wasn't sure, and I was just trying to figure out how to get the inks to move and to get an interesting pattern on the paper to make sure that the entire sheet of paper was covered. So what you're seeing me do is just me messing around trying to figure out how to make all of those things happen. So I've moved the inks around with the airbrush, but of course I do not like that pattern. So you know I can't leave it alone. Now I spray it with more alcohol. And I add a little bit more of the copper metallic ink and some more of the gold metallic ink as well. And now again I use the airbrush to move those inks around. I spray it with a little bit more alcohol. And finally, I think I'm getting somewhere that I am happy with. I like the texture on the paper, and I like the way the metallic inks moved around. So I'm just going over it with the airbrush to dry it and to get a little bit more movement of those metallic inks. And once I'm happy with the way it looks, I take my blow dryer and I dry the paper. You want to make sure that your paper is completely dry before you proceed to the next step. Nothing like watching paint dry, huh? All right, so now my paper is dry, and I've cut down the paper, one piece of the paper, to a 6x6 size. So I'm left over with those two little pieces that you see there, and I've got my circle cutters out. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use the extra paper paper that I cut off, and I'm going to make some circles. That's why it's really important for your paper to be dry before you proceed to this step. So you can see here that I have 3 different sizes. And of course, you don't have to make circles. You can cut out whatever shapes please you. I happen to like the circles. And these circle cutters were purchased on Amazon. The link will be in the description box below, just in case you're interested in getting some of these for yourself. It sure makes this process a lot easier, and they're really inexpensive. And what's nice about these little circle cutters is that they have a little tray underneath that keeps all the little circles that you cut out neatly stacked in there until you open it and pull them out. So here I'm just cutting out the smaller circles. And one piece of advice that I can give you is to cut out more circles than you think you will need, because once you get started, you realize that it's very easy to get carried away. And I think that the more you add, the better it looks. You can't just add, 4 of each. And at first I thought I could. I was just going to add a few, but I found that the more I added, the better it looked. So here you see I'm pulling out the little circles. Now I realize I need more circles. So here comes the fun part. I decided to keep a border around the paper, so I am going to put my circles only in the center, keeping about a 1 inch or maybe even less border around the paper. And I'm using this foam tape, double-sided foam tape that I purchased at Dollar Tree. And the wonderful thing about it is that you get 3 rolls for $1. So I'm going to flip over my circles and start adding the tape. And the smart thing to do is to put the tape down, because once one part of it is sticky and the other part has a film on it. So cut your tape, put it down, and then peel the backing off of it. That works a lot better. So here you see I've got all my circles with a little tape on them, and now I'm starting to remove the backing and adhering them to the paper. So you can see I'm outlining the border that I want to keep. And I didn't think of this when I started putting down these larger circles, but I think the next one that I do, I will remember. You can add more layers of the tape on top of the tape that you've already put down so that some stand out further than others. And the mistake I made here, although it still turned out beautifully, is that I made all the big circles at the same level. And I find that if you put multiple strips of tape on the larger circles, it works better because you're going to want to stack other circles, the smaller ones, on top of there, so you don't want it to be flimsy. So adding a little extra tape to it makes it sturdier, or sturdy enough to hold the other dots. So this is where I decide to start adding layers of the foam tape to the dots so that some stand out further than others. And of course, you can use any color you like. I just chose colors that match the decor in my home, but you can certainly use very vibrant colors or even more muted colors. You don't have to use the metallics. I just thought that that would be really nice. And very important, I didn't mention this, and I didn't do this either, because the room that I'm going to put this in doesn't get a lot of light. But you should seal your paper before you start cutting out your dots and before any of this. Make sure that once you have your ink on your paper that you seal it with, when I do seal my alcohol ink paintings, I use 3 or 4 light coats depending on the size. If it's a full sheet of paper, I will do 4 light coats of the KAMAR varnish, and I wait a few hours in between for it to dry before I add my next coat. Once that's all dry, I will add about 2 or 3 layers of the KAMAR UV protection. I didn't do it here because I thought I was just experimenting, but it turned out so well that I really like it. And like I said, the room that I'm going to put in doesn't get very much sunlight anyway. So if it fades, it's okay, I'll do it again. But I do recommend that you seal this before you start cutting your paper up and making the circles. So you can see that I'm adding layers on some of the circles so that they stand out further. And this one has 3 little pieces of the foam tape to really make it stand out. So here's where I realize I should have added extra tape to the larger circles to make them stand out a little bit further. So at one point I think that I'm done, and I stop videotaping and then realize I need more dots. Really, the more you add and the different heights make it so pretty. And I don't have a frame for it yet, but I'm going to get a shadow box frame so that the glass stands further away from the actual painting and you can see the dimensions and the different heights, and it's going to look really pretty. I'm super excited about it. It would be really fun to create a really large piece like this. That may be my next one. First, I think I'm going to buy the frame and then create the painting around the frame that I choose. So this can be a little time consuming, but it's certainly worth every second because the effect is so nice. And I didn't plan out where I was going to put the dots. I just went with whatever looked good to me at that moment. And I think that's what made it more fun for me because I didn't really have a plan. I had an idea in mind of what I was going to do, but I had no idea how it was going to look or turn out. And I am really pleasantly surprised at how well it turned out for my first go at it. So here's the finished painting. And it's hard to see the dimensions or how they stand out, but there you can see all the little foam tabs, which you won't see once it's in a frame. I hope that you enjoyed this video and that you give this a try. If you do, please don't forget to share it with me on my Facebook page, Vivo Vintage Designs. I would love to see what you come up with. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you in the next video. Bye.